My name is Jonah Jonathan, and thanks for watching The Jazz Musician's Voice. Today I'm speaking with jazz bassist Ben Wolfe, really one of the top musicians in this craft of jazz. Has worked with the who's who and is an established educator as well at the Juilliard School of Music. I've known Ben for many years. He's a great guy. We recently spoke with saxophonist Ned Goold, who is a close friend of Ben Wolfe, and we were really pleased to sit down and speak with him. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe, hit the like button, share with your friends, and stay tuned. We have a lot more future interviews coming.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, today I'm speaking with one of the top world-renowned bassists in jazz, Ben Wolfe. Ben, thanks so much for speaking with us. For people who aren't familiar with your background, let's talk about where you were born and where you're originally from. You're from Baltimore, right?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, first of all.
Thank you.
And I was born in Baltimore, and but I wasn't there long. Then my family, we moved to San Antonio, Texas for 1 year because my father played in the symphony there for 1 year. And then he was a violinist. And then we moved to Portland, Oregon. So Baltimore, San Antonio, Portland, Oregon. And I was in Portland, Oregon until I moved to New York. So I grew up in Portland, but I moved to New York in 1985. So I've been here a long time, longer than anywhere else.
You know, Portland is quite a city because I visited there last summer. I have a friend in Seattle, and yeah, I visited. I did an interview with Chuck Israels, who lives out there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you got a unique scene, and Chris Brown is out there, and I guess his father, Mel Brown, out there. So who were some of the people you were listening to out there in Portland? And
I mean, I was there since I was a little kid, man. So I was there long before I played music. But once what happened was when I was in 7th grade, just to really go back, I was playing baseball and, whatever, sports, that kind of thing. And my best friend, we were real competitive as kids. We're still competitive now on that Words with Friends. Like we had this thing, we were very competitive as kids, healthy competition. And he was like the best musician, or one of them in grade school. So I was like, man, I could do this. It was kind of like that. So he said, okay, you come play in the band. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And I just came to some grade school, it was like a Christmas concert, and they gave me some bells to shake. I was like, man, it's kind of fun. I'm gonna start playing music. So I started playing tuba. And my best friend, who's a trombone player, he became my private teacher. So every day at lunch, we went into a practice room, and he taught me how to play. But it was immediately very easy. It felt easy, and it felt like, once I started, it was just, that's what I was almost. It was a strange thing. And then when I got to high school, the band director had me playing a lot of different instruments. Had me playing electric bass, had me play acoustic bass. I was playing some trombone, bass trombone, different things. But at that point, I didn't even know that people who were into music weren't planning on doing it for a living. I didn't know you could just do it for fun. Never crossed my mind. So in my mind, that's what I was already, So, and then, all kind of stuff started happening, and meeting people, but it took a minute for me to get to the point where I was clear what I was going to do. So by the time I was, let's say, 17 or 18, or even prior, I had these funk bands I put together. It was the 70s. So we were playing like high school dances, and I was working gigs pretty young, electric bass, top 40 bands, playing different hotels in the area, traveling some. So I was doing that, and at the same time, I was listening to jazz, but I wasn't an acoustic bassist yet. And then once I really got serious, once I switched to that, it was like, okay, this is what I want to do. It was kind of like I found my home. I was doing a lot of different things. I was playing classical tuba. I was playing electric bass in different kinds of bands, and listening to a lot of Paul Chambers the whole time. So I kind of found my way. And once I got to the acoustic bass, at that point, I was like late teens, and I became very serious about it. And that's all I did at that point. I was listening to everybody, a lot of Paul Chambers, listening to whoever, a lot of Buster Williams and Ron Carter, and just different things like that. And then Cecil McBee came through town with somebody who I didn't really know. I just knew he was on some records. I didn't know he was playing or anything. And I asked him for some lessons. So I took a train to New York and went there and stayed with some people my family knew. And, it became like a whole world I was in. That was really the only thing I was thinking about and doing, was trying to learn to play.
Well, yeah, I mean, you really had that like foundation in the bass clef. I mean, all those instruments, the bass,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was also writing music a lot at the piano, trying to learn how to do that the whole time as well. I mean, for me, music was just like a world I was in all the time. I wasn't really doing anything else.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, I wasn't. I was completely immersed in it for a long time.
Well, yeah. I mean, you mentioned Cecil McBee, but then took some lessons with Ray Brown. So talk about working with him.
Where I met Ray Brown was this alto player, Bud Shank. He hired me to play with his trio, to play with him at what is now John Clayton's camp in Port Townsend. It used to be Bud Shank's camp. But he hired me to come play with his group at the night concerts. And I knew Ray Brown was going to be teaching at the camp. And I was a kid, so I said, "Hey, Bud, how about you don't pay me for the gigs, but I can go to the camp?" And he said, "Sure." But I would have been there anyway. He could have just said, "No, I can still pay you. You'll be at the camp. That's where you're going to be the whole time." But he said, "Okay," and didn't pay me, which is all right. And then he said I was a student, which I guess I was, but it was a funny thing. But anyway, I met him at this thing, and he gave a master class, and I asked him if he gave me some private lessons, which he did. And that was, from that point on, anytime I'd see him, we'd get together for a lesson, and we became friends. In a sense, we talk on the phone, and he was extremely helpful to me and encouraging, and a lot of tough love as well. It was amazing. I'm very proud to have been around him.
Well, when you talk about like the pillars of the bass, you've got Ron Carter, Ray Brown, perhaps now Rufus Reid, Milt Hinton. Like there's these legends of the music, and you're able to study through that,
Yeah, I mean, the fact I studied with Ron and Ray was really interesting because they were very, very different, but ultimately they're about the same thing. They're about bass lines. I mean, studying with Ray Brown and with Ron Carter, the thing that's interesting is they never mention soloing. Yeah, that's not even. It's not even. They don't even talk about it. It's not even. It's all about bass lines.
Well, that's what. Yeah, I mean, I remember with Ron working on those diagrams, and he's got these bass diagrams, and these, in the end, the true players aren't really hired for whether or not they can solo. It's what they can do with their walking and their bass lines.
Yeah, that's what we do. I think that's the problem with bass and drums. I mean, I don't know if it's conscious, but there's a certain selfishness. Like the bass and drums are playing the whole song. Every song. So the need to have a solo sometimes it's too much. I mean, there's a reason why Paul Chambers will play one solo on a record. And he's incredible, right? But not every song. I personally get tired of that. Like a lot of drummers put posts up on Instagram or whatever, and it's always a drum solo. Like, let me hear you play,
Time, yeah.
The drum part. How about the drum part?
Yeah.
But hey, man, to each their own.
So, I mean, I've got that, believe it or not, it's right here. I've got that Ray Brown bass method, but
it's a great book.
Talk more about some things you learned with Ray Brown. Since we're bass players, I'm sure the audience would like to hear,
Well, the funny thing is, I love that book. I have it on my music stand right now. But with Ray, we never used any books. We didn't use the Ray Brown book. what we did, the majority of the lessons was humming the melody and playing in two. And that was simply what we did. That was like 95% of the bass lessons. Humming the melody and playing in two. And we did a lot of that. And he would demonstrate, and I'd just play tunes for him, and then he'd give me a hard time about it or not. He'd show me what he would do. And he'd talk a lot about Oscar Pettiford and Israel Crosby, who he loved both of them. And he mentioned Paul Chambers once too. I asked Ray, this is when I first met him, at the end of that camp. I said, hey, Ray, who should I check out besides you and Israel Crosby? And he said, quote, they're all those records of Paul Chambers playing in two. You know, so he loved other bass players who, from the bass line perspective. That was his thing. I remember he loved Jimmy Blanton. I mean, that was one of his heroes, huge hero. And I said, you must learn all those Jimmy Blanton solos. He goes, solos? Shit, I learned all the bass lines. Like, he prided himself. And to me, one of the beautiful lessons there is, if you look at least in my opinion, the greatest bass soloists in jazz history, if they never took a solo, you would love them just as much, even though they were the greatest at it. Paul Chambers, Ray Brown, Oscar Pettiford, Jimmy Blanton. If none of them took a solo, you wouldn't be like, man, if only they would have took a solo. Like when you listen to Israel Crosby with Ahmed Jamal, you never think, man, I wish they'd give him some space to blow. Like, never. Yet those guys, like, you know, so yet Ray Brown was like one of the greatest bass soloists ever.
We'll talk also about, you know, because you both worked with both Ray and Ron. Talk about sound production with the right hand, you know, because that's another important thing. I remember using the cork with Ron, but you know, those are kind of some trade secrets of his, you know.
Yeah, see, I play with one finger, so my right hand is more like Ray's than Ron's. But Ron, who I studied with much later, and like he said, you need to you know, everybody, so you need to figure out how you're going to play with your right hand and work on it. Don't take it for granted. And Ray would talk about, he would demonstrate how Oscar Pettiford played with the right hand. He would show me. But with Ray, we spent less time on stuff like that. It was really about note choices and playing in two and humming the melody. With Ron, it was very meticulous on, you know, move your thumbs 1/16 of an inch this way, you know, put your left foot over here.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
It's the tape and a certain height and the eye level and all that stuff.
And it all works. I think Ron's teaching rivals his playing. Yeah. But Ray, you know, they were both incredible teachers in different ways, but it pointed to the same thing, and that was bass lines. So, but Ron talked about the right hand and helped me with my right hand, actually, as did Ray, because it's strange. I have like Ray Brown, Oscar Pettiford, Mingus as well, I believe. A lot of them, they play one finger. Wilbur Ware. It's kind of coming out of a Jimmy Blanton tradition. So my thing's kind of strange because I play with one finger, but play like more. It's almost like I'm trying to play like Paul Chambers with the Ray Brown right hand. So it comes out sort of in between, you know. But yeah, man, the right hand's a trip. Because it's, you know, it's not so simple because everyone's fingers are different.
Yeah.
So if you think of you as being part of the instrument, you know, it's like every bass is different, right? You know, so everyone's like Ron Carter's hands. Those aren't the most average hands.
His hands are long. His fingers are like to here, you know.
I know. So it's not like the average hand.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So there are many ways to do it, but the two fingers thing for me doesn't work, man. I don't like the way it sounds. I suppose I could get it together. It works for everyone else, it seems like. But for me, I play more with a one finger. Oscar Pettiford, Ray Brown, Wilbur Ware approach to the right hand, the technique of the right hand.
So, but yeah, that whole thing, it's like every person's got to figure out themselves the science with the instrument, and it's not just that. It's like I would complain to Ron, like, some of the ways he wanted me to play would be giving me like the tendonitis in the hand. He's like, well, you know, you've got to figure out your way, because I could be playing for 12 hours straight, you know. And I'd be doing that seven nights a week, you know, that
He's right.
type of thing, you know. So I think everybody's got to figure out how they can approach the instrument, but it's a physical instrument.
Jonah, first of all, if you're feeling pain in your right hand, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Every night, man. Every night. My hand's fine, man. My hand's fine.
Exactly. That's exactly.
He's right though, man. Because Ron's about being he's very relaxed in his approach. The thing that he does that's amazing is he teaches you how to play a certain way, but then you have to learn to do that on the bandstand, and he's great at that. But like you practice getting a good sound, not overplaying the bass. Then you get on the bandstand, the drummer's playing like, you know, too loud, really loud. So you have a choice. You have to either fight the drummer or just play the right way and accept the fact that you're being covered up. And I prefer that concept to not fight the drummer. If someone's playing too loud, then that's how it should sound.
Yeah, he talk about like, don't play on stun. He call it stun, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, now I guess when you talk about like Paul Chambers and Ray Brown, technically they're coming from more of an era where there wasn't the amplifier yet and all that.
Yeah,
and
that's I don't use an amplifier, so I don't even own an amplifier. So
yeah.
I'm with that completely.
Yeah.
I've used a couple of times in very particular circumstances, and just like maybe twice in the last 40 years, only because I did a tour with Nicholas Payton, and he asked me if I would do it. So I looked at it as an experiment.
Yeah.
But I don't, you know, I won't do it.
Well, before we get on to more about your life, what is your setup on the bass? What strings are you using? Like, what's the height? All that type of stuff, because you know, you've got a lot of following for young bassists.
You know, I don't know, man. I don't really think about that stuff too much. But as far as strings, I use gut strings, all four, made by it's called Corda, Chorda, made by Parastro. And I've been using those for years. I use the Carlos edition. You know, they're like the regular strings they make, but a little bit smaller gauge. But I use all four gut strings. But for me, I've been using gut strings, you know, since the '80s. So I've been doing it a long time. They're the strings to me at this point. I used to use they were called Golden Spiral, made by Diodario, because I was endorsing them, and then they stopped making them. So now I'm with Parastro. Now I like their strings. They give them to me, so it's great, you know. But they're expensive, man. But I love the strings. I keep them on for a long time. And as far as the string, the height, I have no idea. I don't measure it. You know, I try to keep it where it's comfortable.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, I don't know. Other people's basses are so different than mine. I don't know. I don't think it's crazy high action, but it's also not so low you can't play. It's just comfortable. I used to play the crazy high action way back in the day, but I'm not so, you know, I don't know how high they are, that kind of stuff. I don't even know.
It's quite the challenge sometimes to figure out with strings, because you know, I've dealt with like Ron's black nylons, which I really didn't like because I just found they're really stiff. I've dealt with the gut strings on some people's basses, like when you go sit in on a session. That's one thing people don't realize. Like, if you're going to a jam session to sit in, it's not like a piano where you can just sit down at the piano. Everybody's bass is set up different, so you got to be real careful if those gut strings are real high. But yeah, you've got to have a happy medium, and you've got to keep up, just like a trumpet player's got to keep up playing trumpet with their lips on the bass. You've got to keep up with your fingers, otherwise you're going to get those blisters.
Here's one more quick thing about gut strings. I mean, the way I look at it is this, like in the amplifier. I don't judge what people do. The people should do what they want. But for me, every great bass sound, the ones that I really love, all of them are gut strings and no pickup. So I mean, it seemed kind of obvious to me. So at the same time, when I first started using the gut strings, I wanted to also see what those cats went through, like what problems may have had, whatever they had to deal with, whether drummer's too loud, whatever it may be. So I wanted to experience some of what they went through. And I just never stopped doing it, man. Yeah. I stopped for a week once. I went back to steel strings. John Clayton said, you should try these strings. And I played them. I didn't, lasted maybe a week.
Well, believe it or not, when I listen to like Ron Carter, I liked his sound when he was more of that acoustic gut sound before he went to the electric, the amplified electric. It was just it's a different sound. You're totally right.
I mean, and the guys who do use the pickup, there are different approaches. There's the musicians who try to make it sound like it's acoustic. Like that's the goal for it, and then they're the ones that change the sound completely. So like Ron and Buster, they have beautiful sounds. They're just not acoustic. It's almost like, and I say this not in the negative sense, but it's almost like they've created the hippest electric bass sound.
Yeah.
Because it's not really the sound of their instrument, not necessarily.
That CTI sound is almost as if they're playing electric bass on the upright.
They essentially they are, because it's coming from the vibration, But it's not that I don't like that. I just prefer the other. And I can say I've never heard someone's sound improve with the amplifier. I've never heard it. And I'm talking about even someone like Ray Brown, as great as he is, and it's great. Not that he didn't sound good, it just sounded better without it. I mean, he's still Ray Brown. He sounds great on anything, And but then there's the guys who like their sound. They want to keep it the same, and one or two you almost can't tell for a second. Like David Wong, the bass player, is like that. It's not that much different. But if it's not that much, my thing is, if it's someone's sound isn't that much different, then why do it? Because what is different will be a negative, not a positive, for me. Because I don't believe it's easier to hear if it's louder. Yeah. I don't believe that's not necessarily true. It's almost like saying if something's brighter, it's easier to see. Depends. So sometimes the amplifier, what it does to the sound, it adds like a cushion around it of something else, which gets in the way of the ride cymbal. So it takes up sonic space that would be available if you didn't use the amplifier, which affects the other instruments. So it's not so much just the bass sound, but now the sound of the bass drum or the ride cymbal or the sound of the piano, whatever it may be, their sound will also suffer because of the bass amplifier.
That a lot of that stuff people don't realize when you study history and stuff, like that legendary story about Ron Carter almost not doing Red Clay, Lenny Wright, because of the lockup between the drums and stuff, and they got into a tiff about it.
It's because Lenny wanted to play his drums, I think, and Ron didn't want.
He didn't want him to play rock drums. I can't play with that. But when you talk about bass, we'll go back a little bit about electric bass. I've really been enjoying like James Jamerson and his sound with the flat wound strings and stuff.
Yeah,
what were you doing? What was your setup like on electric when you were playing funk stuff?
I was into Louis Johnson, and Marcus Miller and guys like that. Anthony Jackson, Paul Jackson, Vern Dean White. Jocko and Stanley Clark. I was a kid, so I liked them too. But again, I was so young then, man. I was, but I was trying to play funk bass. I was in the '70s, and I wasn't great at it, but that's what I was into at the time.
Yeah. So you moved to New York in the mid 1980s.
85. Yeah.
So talk about the music scene. What was it like when you arrived at that time? What were some of the venues you're hanging out at and the spots you're learning at?
When I first came to New York, I started playing with Ted Curson at the Blue Note Jam session every night. I got this gig, the drummer in Portland named Ron Steen knew Ted Curson, told him I was coming. So they hooked me up. It was $20 a gig every night, man, you know, but it was 6 nights a week. And I learned a lot of music on the gig because Ted Curson would never tell you what song he's going to play or count it off. He would just start playing. So if you didn't know the tune, you were forced to either learn it or, you know, find a way, you know, because you can't leave in the middle of the song. So I was doing that, but I met a lot of musicians, man. I met a lot of people. I remember seeing Benny Green, who I'd not seen since high school, because my high school band played a concert with his high school band. I mean, Dave Kikoski was down there. A lot of the musicians from my generation would congregate there. You know, when I first met Tane was down there. I first met Harry Connick Jr. was down there. And it was cool because playing that gig, I was able to hear the last group every night for free. So I heard a lot of the great singers, which I didn't appreciate at the time. Sarah Vaughan, Carmen McRae. I'd hear Ray's group when he came through town. So I heard a lot of music, and I met a lot of people. So it was cool, man. But again, it was crazy time because the place I was living was like, we were squatting in Brooklyn, so there was no rent or electricity or anything. But my roommate knew how to hook that stuff up. It was just crazy times, man. You know, no money. Yeah. But the thing was, I came to New York to learn to play. I didn't come to New York for success. You know, but I hope I can get this gig or, I mean, I did hope that, but it wasn't like my goal. It wasn't like, wasn't much beyond learning how to play. That's what I was thinking about. So I was playing constantly, jam sessions during the day and playing the Blue Note every night and going out and hearing music when I could. And there's still a lot of people to hear then. In the band Sphere with Charlie Rouse, Junior Cook was around. There were more cast from that, you know, era alive then. You can go hear Cedar Walton and Ron play duo in a little club. You go hear Tommy Flanagan, you can see Hank Jones. You can see all those people then a lot, you know, because they were live.
Yeah.
And it was really exciting, man, you know, but I was like 23, man, so I know people are always like, New York's changed. Sometimes I wonder, yes, it's changed, but I've certainly changed, you know, since I was 23 and first got to New York. I mean, I was terrified, man. I was like a child compared, you know, Portland and New York City have very little in common.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite a time from what I gather from all these interviews I've talked with people, the 80s, you know, and there's like that double-bladed thing, you know. I was talking with your good friend Ned Goold. We'll go into that. But yeah, like living this very kind of like life of poverty, but enjoying all this great music and learning your instrument, and you know, living in a place where it could be a little dangerous in the 80s.
Well, you know, it didn't feel there. It might have been, but nothing ever happened. It never really felt dangerous, and it didn't feel like I wasn't about to eat or something. It just was. It was all that we were worried about was learning how to play. It wasn't about any kind of other thing, man. You know, that was it. It was no social media. You know, it was cell phones. You had a little television you plug in, no cable. You know, it was just very simple, but we played a lot of music. And it you know, I wouldn't want to live like that now, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
But there was a huge scene of musicians, young musicians trying to learn to play. So it was like a whole community. And some of the people are still around, most are not. Like Russell Malone was one of my best friends. I met him back then too. You know, we talk, and like, it's interesting now to talk to the few people I still today that I knew back then.
Yeah, well, that's quite some time ago. So
it
almost 40 years ago now.
Thank you. I know it's a trip when I think about it. You know, 35 years.
Well, you know, Ned Goold was telling me, you know, you were the one who got him the gig with Harry Connick Jr.
Yeah.
You know, you saying like, Harry didn't really want to listen to him, but you kept playing him on your answering machine.
Well, I told Harry about Ned. He came and heard us play. He didn't. I don't know if he thought much of him at that point. And then I just happened to Harry called me. We were playing duo then, or it was right before the big band, and I was hiring the big band. And then I had something in my outgoing message that Ned was playing on. And Harry called, said, "Who's that? Is that Branford?" I said, "No, that's Ned Goold." He goes, "Oh, hire him. Yeah, you get him for the big band." So it was just kind of like almost like a fluke.
Yeah, yeah. Well, talk about working with Harry Connick Jr. You know, that's one of the biggest. He's one of the biggest names in jazz for a while. You know.
Yeah, it was interesting, man. I met him, like I said, at the Blue Note, and then I remember he used to play at the Knickerbocker solo piano, like on Sundays. So I'd stop by sometime. He said, "Hey, man, you should come sit in." So we started playing duo, and this was before he was really famous, but he was about to start. So when I joined him, it was right when it was about to start for him. I mean, he already had a record or two out. And we were touring, playing duo. It was very exciting. The first time I've ever done that kind of thing, you know, television shows or whatever. It was kind of seductive, man, get caught up in that world. But it was great. We did that movie, Harry Met Sally, shortly after I joined the band, and he just blew up at that point. Yeah. And then he had the big band. But he was a great musician, man, extremely talented. So, I learned a lot from him, actually, looking back.
Yeah, well, I mean,
contact. We text every now and then, man. But we were young, man. We went through different. I quit. I got fired. I quit. I came back. It was a lot of back and forth with me and him.
Yeah, I from what I gathered from Ned, yeah, that was kind of the thing, like back and forth, and through the years he's done his acting too, and I've seen him on like Law and Order SVU, and I've seen
he's
him
been making movies, bro. He's been making movies since 1987 or 88.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been doing it a long time, man. He does a lot. He does a lot of different things, obviously.
Well, in addition to him, let's talk about you being a sideman, because you work with so many greats throughout the years, and now you're an educator at Juilliard, and you've worked with all the guys like Wynton and Krall, and so talk about what do you think it takes to be a successful sideman? Some of the guys you played with,
I think it depends on who you're playing with, but the basic things, you got to, learn the music, be prepared, be professional. I mean, I'm a believer in that, being professional. If the gig calls for a black suit and tie, wear a black suit and tie and be on time. Like, some people mess it up from that point of view, so that never even gets to the music. And then be prepared, man. Like, when Wynton called me, just to sub the first time, he was playing City Movement, which was like this long piece, man. And I'm like, I gotta learn this. So I spent a lot of time studying it. I got a hold of a live recording. I had the record. They sent me the music. So I just learned it, man. I knew it. And so when we did, my first gig was playing that without a rehearsal. And to this day, Wynton's like, he tells, man, Wolfe came out, man. He learned the whole thing. And, but really, that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
I just do what you're supposed to do. So, but my sideman thing's a little different than most, because I usually would get hired for what I do. So if I audition, I wouldn't get the gig. I auditioned for Betty Carter, didn't get the gig. I auditioned for Horace Silver, didn't get the gig. I auditioned for J.J. Johnson, didn't get the gig. Usually it's people, they will hire me for what I do. Oh, he plays like with no amplifier, or he does this or he does that. So I would usually get hired for the way I play. So it might be less people, but the people that hire me for what I actually do, which is different than just being a bass player.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I've been fortunate, man. I love being in Wynton's band. That was really wild to go from Harry Connick Jr. to Wynton Marsalis, because it's so different. One had a huge entertainment aspect to it, and one had almost zero, which I prefer. The zero.
Yeah.
Or not zero, but it wasn't about it wasn't a show. It was about much more about the music. Which is not to say Harry's not about the music. I don't mean that in a negative sense. He does what he does. He's very serious about the music. but it's also a show. It's about entertaining the people, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. I mean, people do what they do, whatever that may be. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. Well, I mean, you really proved your mark as a bass player. I was watching. We talked off camera, but I was watching you play with Krall Allen and Benny Green on YouTube, and your soloing style is it's on point. Your intonation is there. You're singing along with your solos. Talk about, because we were talking about the right hand and stuff and bass lines. Talk about soloing and your concepts behind that.
I don't think about it too much because, like I was saying before, I don't think it's important necessarily. But I love Paul Chambers. Been my hero before I even played upright bass. I love Oscar Pettiford. I love Charlie Parker. I love Monk. So it's just a language, and the longer I've played, the more I've realized that, like, if you listen to the great ones, here's a great example. On that album, Round About Midnight, a Miles Davis record, the bass features Dear Old Stockholm. And Paul Chambers there's an intro, which is like a pedal kind of thing. And then he walks, and then there's another pedal kind of thing at the end of the form. And he solos. And then he walks after the solo, but he plays everything the same way. It's not like it doesn't sound like, oh, I get the solo, now I'm really going to play. It's not that kind of thing. It never sounds like he's waiting to solo. It sounds like, oh, he's improvising a melody now. So I like to approach it like that, man. I like to approach everything like I'm accompanying everything. So to me, the bandstand, playing music is not about what I'm playing, or it's about what everyone else is playing. I'm really from that philosophy of listen to yourself last. The practice room is all about you. Everything is about you. How, am I in tune? And whatever you're working on, the list could be long. Almost infinite amount of things you could be working on and focusing on about yourself and about your own playing in order to go in the bandstand and not think about it. So to me, practicing is training your instincts. The bandstand is listening and reacting. That's what you're doing. Okay, yeah, so now you're playing a tune, medium tune, drummer's playing brushes, you're the bass player. The reaction is going to be to playing too. That's what you do. That's what studying the history of jazz music tells you to do. So you have to learn all this stuff in order to not think about it. Because if you're listening to yourself play, then that's simply what you're doing. And now the group sound suffers. And what's important at all times, whatever you're doing at the moment, what the most important thing is, how does the ensemble sound? Not how do I sound? Oh, it's my solo. Oh, I'm going to play this. Oh, I'm going to show them that I can do this. All that stuff detracts from the music, in my opinion. But at the same time, the natural human element of people do show off. People do care what someone else thinks. All those things can be used as strengths as well, because they are part of the personality. So, but I believe in having a philosophy to kind of keep me in line. It's not like I'm just like, I go on the bandstand and nothing matters about me. It's not like that. It's just I try to think about the music first, if I can,
A jazz group is a team, and you're a team player.
Totally,
you gotta be a team player,
Totally. That's what it is, man. It's an ensemble. That's the whole point of it. I mean, listen to the Coltrane band. You listen to the Coltrane band, you never get the sense that John Coltrane is like the band with Elvin and McCoy and Jimmy Garrison. It never sounds like Coltrane is trying to demonstrate his skill. Check me out. Check me out. Look, listen to this. Oh, I'm going to play Giant Steps over it now. It never, ever sounds like he's showing off. Ever. Then you go down to his smalls and you hear like 1,000 tenor players showing off.
Yeah.
They're missing the point. But at the same time, I get why they're doing that, because they want to be part of the scene. This is crazy. It's a crazy thing, man. So I think self-awareness is very important. Understanding, I'm doing that thing. I'm playing for people to go, whoo, or I'm playing so, I don't know. I'm really into that kind of thing. When I was with Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, I don't know what year was it, 96 maybe? And I did an experiment where I would play nothing. Like you could play things the other cats are gonna like. You can play something Wynton will like. You can play something the horn players will go, yeah, whatever. You can play for that kind of acceptance. So I decided to play nothing for that reason. I made it an exercise. Don't play anything because you'll get a reaction from the band. Only play for the music. And it was interesting because it revealed all the places I would do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, man.
It's definitely I totally agree with you. That was always instilled with me with Ron. Like, it's more about the bass lines and it's more about like your time and your sound as a bassist. But nowadays, you got guys on YouTube making these compilations of people's solos, and that's all they're looking at. And I would even, I was a student of Mulgrew Miller's at William Patterson, and I would always ask him, like, what do you think of this person or this? What do you think of this bass player? And he'd always be like, he'd tell me the ones he liked that they could play time, and the ones that solo, you usually tell me the ones that are focused on solos. He's, to be honest, I didn't really enjoy playing with him, And he would, those are little things that you don't repeat, like, you're not going to repeat the names and stuff, but you understand through the playing of somebody, and we see that with you. You've been a sideman on so many recordings, so your philosophy rings true. Definitely.
What's something interesting about that is, and again, it's my point of view, but the irony is the bassists who spend their time working on soloing, play very. I take it back. The bass players who don't put soloing first usually play far more interesting solos than the ones who don't. The ones who just work on soloing all day, that's what they sound like. So it doesn't, for me, it's uninteresting. Yeah. It's really uninteresting to me. Electric bass has really gotten out of hand. You have cats playing electric bass up front soloing with another bass player in the back. Why not just play guitar, man? That's what it is.
That's totally true.
Bass, you call it a bass, it's more impressive. Like that's something that's like an effect someone has seeing it. It's so far away from the actual music that it's like crazy.
I totally agree. If you would watch Jaco Pastorius, he wasn't all focused on that slapping stuff or any of that. He might have been a show off, but I'm pretty sure he'd be disappointed to see how bass is now, or these guys who've got six string basses or 8-string basses trying to play these things, but they can't walk.
Anthony Jackson plays 6-string bass. I don't have that problem with him.
It depends on the guy,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But it's like it's just not my thing. I like bass players who play bass. Marcus Miller can play all kind of stuff on the bass, but when it comes time to play a bass line, he does it. That's how Christian is on upright. Like I tell students all the time, I know you love all the fast blues licks and all the fast, but he actually plays good bass lines. Like that's the part. That's why I love hearing Christian with his big band, because he plays for the band, and it's like, to me, that's my favorite way of hearing him play. So, but everyone's got their own point of view and their own taste, and but like I say, the bass players who are the bass line bass players tend to play the best solos.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Well, if you want to talk about like teaching at Juilliard and stuff, how can young players who want to study with you, what's the process to get involved and learn from you? So you got so much knowledge.
Teaching, education. I don't really think of myself as a teacher, but it's something I do. I mean, I play music, I write music, and I teach some, but I don't think of myself as like an educator. You know what I mean? Like that's a thing. I don't really look at it that way. But as far as studying with me, you just got to hit me up. I give lessons to anyone who contacts me, whether they're at the school or not. That's, you know. But the way the Juilliard thing worked out, I've been there, this is my 19th year. They called me to come teach there. So I started doing it, man. You know, and I'm still there for some, you know, teaching like small ensembles. I teach like the graduate, it's called the Artist Diploma Group. And it's cool, you know, it's something I do, but it's difficult at times. But I have a lot of periodically I have private students. It's never more than a couple at a time, but they go in and out, you know. A lot of times people study with me when they're preparing to audition for Juilliard, which is, you know, I understand the strategy behind that for them.
Yeah, that's
But it's smart, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, the main thing is, man, I'm not one of those people who are anti-jazz education or pro. You know, I look at it, you know, a practice room is a practice room is a practice room. It could be your bedroom at home. It could be a practice room at a school. It could, you know, as long as you're getting better every day. You know, it's like there's a lot of talk about jazz education being a problem. Okay, so let's take someone like Ron Carter. He's been in jazz education for many years. Now, if you take a lesson with Ron Carter outside of a school, it's no different than the lesson you take with him through the school. It's literally the same thing.
Yeah.
So there are good teachers and there's bad teachers, or to put it in a more polite way, there's teachers who can help you and some who won't help you as much, and that can come in the form of someone at a school or someone you just meet, you know. So I think the schools have a function of bringing people together. Like, let's say, you know, you're 17, 18, maybe younger. You're in a town where you're the only person your age who's trying to play jazz music. So if you go to a school, now you're surrounded by people. That's a way to do that.
Yeah.
So what happens?
The relationships.
What happens at the school depends on the school, the teacher, the individual. It's not, and to be honest, the whole thing about they're making the students play a certain way, the students at school aren't listening to us anyway half the time. You know, so it's a faulty argument, in my opinion. But, you know, I do think the problem I do see with schools is that, you know, it's easier for some kids to go because of their economic situations, that kind of thing. And I think some schools do a good job of trying to, you know, give scholarships and that kind of thing. That's where I would question the fairness more on that side than on the side of what they're teaching. That depends.
Yeah.
But as far as me, man, I just try to give information I have, man, you know, try to help people out if I can. I like giving. I like working with the ensemble, but I don't mind private lessons. I find beginners hard to teach sometimes.
Yeah, but
someone like John Clayton is probably great with beginners.
Yeah. Well, before we finish up, talk a little bit about like your recordings as a leader. I know you came out with one a couple years ago, I think, for your father, right?
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Hey, that record, Fatherhood, that was my 9th record as a leader of my music, and my father had passed away shortly before I started working on it, and I basically made the record in the way I thought he would encourage me to do. You know, where I recorded, how we recorded, who the engineers were, like that kind of stuff. You know, so I tried to do it like how he would have encouraged me. Like, you know, it'd be like, hey, Daddy, I want to record here, but it's too expensive. Just do it. Like, he'd always try to get me to, you know, do things, if I could, you know, the best way possible. So I tried to make the record, man, you know, and I feel pretty good about it. I usually don't like my records so much. Usually like parts of them and not other parts. And the parts that I usually like at first are the parts I continue to still like. And the parts I don't like stay that way, essentially. But I feel good about this record. I like how we recorded. We didn't use any headphones, didn't use any booths. We played all, it's all in the same room. It's Sears sound, good sounding room, good sounding piano, and people were uncomfortable, but it sounded. I like the sound very much.
Okay, I found this on the web for a series.
I'm not asking you serious.
Siri's listening in.
Siri found the studio, but I'm planning on making 2 records this year coming up. 3 different ensembles, 2 different records, because I won a grant, a Chamber of Music America composition grant recently, and I also won it, I don't know, 12 years ago or something, 10 years ago. So these are like extended large ensemble pieces. So I'm gonna make 1 record with both of those pieces, with 2 different groups, and then a small group record as well with Nicholas Payton, hopefully. That's the plan. You never know, with COVID, everything keeps falling apart. We were supposed to record last summer, or this summer.
Yeah, that's the final question. How are you dealing with the COVID epidemic?
I'm cool. I mean, I'm fortunate that I'm okay. It's like, I think from a music standpoint, for the young musicians, just from a complete music point of view, for the young musicians, it's harder because they should be playing constantly. Constantly, they should be playing every day, every night. That's what their life should be. Never say no, play as often as possible. I did that for my whole youth, so I don't feel a need to play. I don't miss playing on the bandstand. I mean, I don't, if I was 23, I'd be going crazy right now. Like, I couldn't go a day without playing back then. I wouldn't be able to sleep, you know what I mean? But I'm at a different point. I'm 58, man, so it's a little bit different. So, and I'm cool with that. I can practice, I can write, I can try to prepare for when it's time to play again. And I'm pretty much a loner in a sense anyway. So being home all the time and not going out is sort of the norm for me at this point. I used to go out constantly, and now I don't. I stay in. And if my son's here, that's like the only person I can be around. That it's great. I love it. But so that part's fine. I feel bad, for people that are suffering. Of course. You know what I mean? So, and obviously, all that's going on in the world, that's far more important than whether I'm playing or not. Like that seems very unimportant with the culture of what's happening in the world and in the country right now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's it's so much going on that, like, how's the bass coming? You know what I mean? Like, at this point, there are bigger problems. That's for sure.
You're right. I mean, this is the general theme with every established musician I've talked to. There's more to life than just music. There's other things and other projects and other stuff.
Music is important, but I don't need to be doing it right now. I mean, I'll wait till it's time. I'm okay with that.
Great. Well,
but I also think the stuff that's happening, like all the Instagram stuff, that is like getting out of hand. I'll get tired of that because it's like, to me, it goes against almost all the principles I believe in for music.
There's too much of
the remote recording.
All that, yeah. There's too much of it.
That sounds so much. It does not. I don't like a booth in the studio. So you can imagine, I'm not going to like cast recording. And here's my question for you about this: why does everything have to be visual? Last I checked, music's an oral tradition, man. It's not about singing. Everything is. We're at the point now where there are videos that say this video has no sound. Like, I don't know. And not that there aren't great musicians doing these things. It's not something that I'm attracted to. I'd rather hear someone just come up there by themselves and just play a melody than see 1,000 faces of the same person on the screen. Though I do like, nothing against my man, Jake McCollier, man. He's a brilliant young dude, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You've got, there's people who've been doing videos for a long time and the documentation for a long time. But with this COVID, there was all of a sudden a flood of people trying to do that. And I just always, in my posts, like on social media, is like try to be thoughtful about what you're going to be putting out. Something educational, something interesting. Don't just play your solo every time. Oh, here's a solo. Here's a solo. Here's a solo.
Who was it? I don't know. I have no idea who it was. It might be someone I know. Bass player put a video of them playing long tones with the bow. I mean, that was it. You look at the bow moving across the screen. I'm thinking, is this for real? But it was.
Wow.
That's so out to me. Like, okay, if people are filming themselves practicing, they're not concentrating. But it started before COVID. They were like, this Facebook Live was getting out of hand. You see like horn players and big bands with their phone pointed at them, sitting there counting rests. That's out of hand.
You know, we talked more about that off screen, but I'd like to see like more of like a curated type of thing with videos in one place.
Yeah,
where it's not just like any old person. It's got to be like an established club or established person putting their stuff out. I saw like a video on Facebook Live a little while ago of like Kurt Elling, and I think it had like some like 700 people watching or something. So, you know, there are certain guys who can command that.
Definitely an audience for it, no question.
Yeah.
And there have been some. I prefer when people are doing remote from a club with no people. Like at least they're really playing together.
Yeah.
I think that Aaron Deal did one the other couple of days ago that I thought was really good.
Well, you know, we'll see what happens. You know, the technology is changing. I suspect coronavirus will be here with us for a while. But you know, there's time to practice. There's time to do other things in the meantime. And it sounds like you got some great projects upcoming. So yeah, where can people see your music? BenWolfe.com or Ben Wolfe Music or?
Oh yeah, my website's benwolfe.com.
Great. Yeah. Well, yeah, keep doing what you're doing. You know, one of the top bassists. Yeah, you give us a lot of good points. Thanks so much for doing
thanks
this
for having
with us.
me, bro. Thank you.